So hello, welcome to the 26th Earhacks live, and there's already a couple of questions. I think we have over 20 questions now, some drama, and some eager attendees from all over the world, so even from Mexico and Ecuador. So as you can see, we have Spain, Mallorca, Mexico, and of course Ecuador and Paraguay, and they enjoy the arcade music, which was composed by me. As you can see, I'm very talented music maker. So let's start with the show, Java EE 8 news and Guardians and stuff. So the first thing is I yesterday announced a new workshop, and this is about React.js. So nothing with Java, more with JavaScript and with Webpack and Angular, with Gulp and stuff like this. And I was asked about a lot, so there is going to be in October. Earlier there is no time, but it might be fun. So if you like, attend that. Then the regular workshops are already well attended, so everything will take place. So there are already sufficient registrations to everything, to Bootstrap, effective architectures, and even the workshops in July, testing and microservices. There are already sufficient registrations. So if you would like to attend, just register. And then start with the Java EE 8 news. So I got lots of questions and actually interview requests, which I will also perform. What's the deal with the Guardians and with Java EE? And what you should know, I think at the beginning of this year, I created a Slack working group and invited a couple of people. Meanwhile, we are about 140 people from all over the world. And Reza Rahman also participates in the group. And then the Reza got the idea to create another group called Java EE Guardians, which is not really another group, it's rather than the same group with different target, and it is called Java EE Guardians. And what the Reza does is it tracks the progress of Java EE 8. It makes more transparent, and what I'd attempt to do, or not I, this is 140 other people, is to push Java EE 8 forward and create a website. Is going to be Java EE.io. This is not online live now, with lots of resources and community around Java EE. So this is what happens behind the scenes. So no conspiracy. I hope everything is productive, and there is a nice Slack channel. So if you really would like to contribute something to Java EE 8 and you have constructive ideas, ping me via chat and leave the email. I will invite you. There are actually two requirements. The first one, you have to be nice, have a little bit sense of humor. And the next one, you should be constructive, and not write, long political emails with some, I don't know, conspiracy theories or whatever. Okay, so now we covered this. I think this was all meta stuff. And no, there is something, as I actually wanted, there is a Java EE Guardians charter. If you search for this, you will find the article. Yeah, but even better, what you have to do right after the show is to listen to a podcast. It's a VJAG podcast, Virtual Jag, and it is really interesting podcast with not live. It is, where was it? Past sessions. It was a session with Reza and with James Gosling, actually. It was the last one, so you have to search for this, and there is in the show notes there is a link to the charter where you can sign up and to support the Java EE Guardians. So this is actually the Virtual Jag podcast. So we have to actually search for the podcast. Past sessions upcoming podcast, exactly. And this is going to be this one, the episode 11, show notes. And there's the Guardians of the Galaxy. This is not the Razer is not involved in this movie, rather than tries to guard Java 8. So there is the charter of Google Docs. And what you can do, you can sign up or you can read it. This is actually the whole story, and they're tracking the progress or not progress, or the laziness of Java E. So interesting stuff. So if you like to improve the world, get involved. Okay, so now you have the homework, right? To listen to the podcast is with Reza Rahman and James Gosling. It's a really nice one. And then go to the show notes and read the Guardian stuff, and wait for 2 pages. The one is going to be Java E Guardians, and the next one Java E I/O. So everyone is working on them right now. So okay, this was the a little bit of drama. So I got lots of questions in the internet. What's up with that? So another interesting thing what happened, meanwhile, there was a nice page called java.net, and java.net is no more available. So the domain is still available, but it is rerouted to Java community at Oracle, which is not a bad thing, because this page looks a little bit more than the old one. I'm a little bit sad because the old one was a piece of history, but this is what happens now. Even older was JavaSoft. If you go to JavaSoft, you go straight to Oracle. So this was the very beginnings of Java. So java.net is gone. What should be gone, but it isn't, is Kenai actually. Kenai was like java.net 2.0, and it was supposed to be closed at April the 28th in 2017. I thought 2016, and then you will have to migrate the stuff away. So what's interesting, as Oracle bought Sun, there was a message on their Kenai, we will close it, and this was actually a mistake. So then Oracle apologized. No, we won't close it now. So now they close it 8 years later, which I think is okay. What I suppose behind all of this, the website is old. The java.net, it was even older, so no one works on this anymore. And because probably of maintenance or security issues, they try to close it down and aggregate everything to the Java community at Oracle. So this is actually what I suppose what happens behind the scenes. Okay, let's go to the where is the chat? Here is it. Scotland War, so crazy. So the link is censored. Interesting. So we have that. Okay, and we just have to rearrange the. No, it looks good. This is what I don't need. Okay. So we covered this, and then. Interesting question, what happened with all the Java E spec? Because they were on java.net site and now they are gone. And Antonio Goncalves wrote an email and asked about this, and how you can track this. So what I prepared beginning of the year, I think, list of all Java 8 specs with mailing lists. And so if you go to the mailing list, for instance, here, this is the Java E mailing list, and go to the users and browse archive, you will find the recent message, and this is actually this one, Java migration Java regarding java.net shutdown. And the answer at May 5th, which is somehow recent, is very pragmatic. So I know Bill Shannon is really a pragmatic guy, so he wrote just okay. What Antonio asked, which is reasonable, say okay, it wouldn't be better to have all these specs in Markdown or ASCII doc format so the community could easier contribute. And what Bill answered is okay. So converting the specs is a lot of effort because they're using FrameMaker right now, and the spec leads really like the FrameMaker tool, and inertia is hard to overcome. So this is true. So what I think, all the expert group members at Oracle right now are working on something else, like, I don't know, probably cloud or microservice related, and they are not and they are not, they have no dedicated time, to build tools to migrate the content somewhere else. And yeah, what could probably happen, I don't know, probably there is some kind of converter which would convert FrameMaker to Markdown or something like this. But let's see what happens. And lots of contents are already on GitHub, so it might be actually a good thing that java.net was shut down. And if we get everything on GitHub, then everything would be fine. So we covered this. Look at the specs. So you can track the progress just watching the mailing lists. So this was the java.net v3, because v2 was Kenai. So Kenai will go away in 2017. And this was the email. This was some marketing stuff. And we covered the podcast. So you have to search for the VJAG podcast. And this is episode 11 with the link to the charter. Okay. We have that. So I close the Chrome. And now the first question is JSF. So it was an interesting one, and the question is: there is a JSF project with 2K. This one with 2K concurrent users, and can we use JSF 2 in non-blocking mode? And there are several questions. Should we use JSR concurrency utilities 236 to solve a problem, or we should use Node.js and Angular? So first, 2,000 concurrent users, not a lot. So some of my clients are using JSF with far more. So a recent project we used 2,500 concurrent users without any problems. Actually 2,500 durable sessions. So not durable, sessions which were open for the whole day. And it works. So the question is not how many users we get, rather than, what the users are doing. If all the users work on the application like crazy, they have like a chat application, so you get 2,000 concurrent requests. This might be a problem, but 2,000 concurrent users is still, the only problem you probably can get is the heap size, because one user session can take some amount of memory. In my current JSF project is around 10 MB, so I measured this. So with 2,000 users, it might be a problem with the heap, but you can do something about this. With the heap, you can store, the session state on the client, so there would be not a lot heap involved. You can compress the session state, then you will need more CPU, but less memory. So what I'm going with this, it is really hard to predict how the JSF will behave. And this non-blocking mode, what I would like to draw something. So first, how JSF operates. This is actually what I would like to show you. And what JSF actually is, so we have the browser with the DOM. And on the server, we have something like the DOM, but this is not a DOM tree, it is the component tree. And each component sits in memory and waits to be rendered. And what JSF framework does, it diffs, or it compares both trees and tries to replicate the changes. This is actually what all about JSF is. So actually very similar to React or Angular 2 with the Shadow DOM a little bit, except as the Shadow DOM is not in the browser rather than on the server. So so what happens behind the scenes is the following. On each request, it really depends on the framework. What will happen is the tree is going to be parsed by the JSF runtime, and each component renders itself and creates basically a huge string, which is sent to the browser. If you're using Ajax, you could partially update the nodes, and each update is queued and then sent to the server, and the server does something with it. So this is how JSF operates. So the question is NIO. NIO could be interesting if we would use blocking requests and we would like to park threads. This is where NIO might be interesting. So we are just blocking the server here, and like long polling. not the server, the client, and we don't like to consume the thread, so then NIO could be interesting, but this is not how a GSF, to my knowledge, operates. So this really depends on the GSF providers. Probably there is one which uses NIO with thread parking, but usually I don't think it's the case. Usually what happens on each request, the whole tree is rendered as quickly as possible and sent back to the client. So the only question you should ask yourself is, how quickly it happens. So how quickly the whole rendering process happens on the server, and how much CPU it consumes, because CPU might be at a problem. So if you get 2,000 concurrent requests to one server, what can happen? That you get multiple parallel requests, of course, and the CPU gets overloaded. Yeah, this is what you should you should track what the users are actually doing, and then see whether it can be fast enough. So if you are using Angular, so the next so no question here. Go back to the. I would like to rearrange it again. So this is how it should be. Okay. So it is blocking mode, and it could use concurrency utilities to decouple the GSF rendering with slow processes in the background. So exactly. So what you could do is say, okay, this GSF should render, and if there is something like fire and forget, you can absolutely use, for instance, completable future and concurrency utilities. So look, for instance, at Project Porcupine. So if you go to GitHub, and the project is called Porcupine. So you could do something like injecting an executor service, and perform asynchronous processing. So you can then decouple the front end from the back end. But yeah, this is what you could do, and we actually did it. So you could use Node.js in the front end and Angular 2. So what you could, of course, do, you could use Angular 2 or React in the front end, and in the back end, you can just go with JAX-RS. So there will be no problem at all. With just JAX-RS, it would scale like crazy. So if you care about the performance, so performance is GSF2 is the slowest part for sure. JAX-RS or EJBs are orders of magnitude faster than GSF. So you can replace GSF entirely with AngularJS and introduce a nice business API and call from AngularJS or React with something, because React is just a view. AngularJS is more than a view. To communicate with the backend. And this was the last alternative, exactly. So Angular 2, JavaScript from Whitefly, it would be one war. This is the usual architecture what I am doing, and the REST API in another war. And why two wars? Because usually the life cycles from the front end war is different from the backend war. Therefore, two wars. JAX-RS neither work on non-blocking mode. So JAX-RS can work in non-blocking mode, absolutely. So you can do this with JAX-RS, and what happens behind the scenes is you won't block the HTTP threads, rather than you will pass the request to your own thread pool, so your application server will always remain responsive. If you're interested in this, look at the Java EE microservices course. So I'm talking about this, and there is parallelization with Callable. So this is actually what you would like to have. So if you don't like to watch the course, look at suspended annotation, and I think it's called asynchronous request. Suspended and asynchronous request. I hope now everything is clear. So yeah, lots of people in the chat. It's nice. No questions from Twitter as usual, but the chat is lazy, which is unusual. So on here, also no questions here. So we have some. Okay. So next one. Different payment methods. How to inject the right implementation based on payment type at runtime. So depending on payment time, he would like to inject the different payments. And it is absolutely possible. So what you have to do is you will have to inject an instance of payment. So instance of payment. And the instance of payment, it would look like instance of payment and payments at inject and payments.select, and you can pass an instance of a qualifier, and the name could be the name of the type. So you can pass the type here, and if the qualifier, you need a qualifier instance matches the type. So if this is the enum, you will get your instances. You will get your subtype. And what you can do, we can just try to find it. It's still online. I think I even implemented this in the book Java Patterns, and the source code was, I think, plugin. Plugins, and let's see, source, main resources, exactly, serialization type, and you can see we have the type here. And this is annotation literal serialization. So that's exactly what I talk about. And there is a serialization qualifier and the serializer, which just is going to be injected, and the type is going to be implemented. So look at this example. It is exactly what you're asking. Is it needed? I mean, not always. What you can, of course, do, it really depends what you would like to achieve. So usually, this is only worth in case you have somehow a plugin mechanism and you have lots of payment types. If you have just 2 or 3 payment types, I would just get the type, just inject whatever the 3 types here right away, and with a simple if-else statement or switch statement, choose the right one. It is far easier to understand than any magic with instances here. So, and then after 2 minutes, the next question is, after successful payment, the product has to be shipped, but there is a restriction, it can be shipped only after 2 minutes have passed. Since threads are forbidden, how to execute the shipping after the restriction ends? So what you can perfectly do is using one-shot timers, so at schedule annotation, so an EJB, which sets a method which sets the timer to 2 minutes, and after 2 minutes, something happens. So there is a one-shot timer, which is very possible. It's also as an example from the book. So just do that, and the content type, what you can do, you can set the content type in the header, or what you can always do, you can set the content type in a filter. Servlet filter. You should be able to manipulate the servlet filter. What you will have to do is to cast the request to HTTP servlet request. Then you can do this, or you can specify the content type right away in the header with request headers and specify the content type. Or even better, produces. So you can specify the content type with produces. Perfect. So I got some questions on Twitter. Perfect. Alexander asks me what my opinion about Vaadin compared to JSF. So Vaadin is very similar, is somehow similar to JSF. The only difference in Vaadin versus JSF is Vaadin, you are using Java, which is then transformed in components, and in JSF you are using HTML, which is parsed into components. So the difference is the input, And Vaadin uses a binary protocol to replicate the state between the client and the server. So Vaadin is a perfect thing for dashboards, for instance. So there's this Vaadin is a way to go. So both are server-centric frameworks. So from the architecture, they are similar. So JSF comes with data binding, and Vaadin comes with data binding as well. And someone is from Florida, so nice global audience. Someone asked me, is that hot in Germany today? I would say not that hot, 25 degrees or something. Okay. For May it is hot, but it's not really hot. Okay. Now the best one. I was wondering what to do when encounter methods that you would need to use again and again. Yeah. For instance, IBAN, credit card number, phone number. And com.linux put them into the util package, and the question is it the right approach to do? And here you already noticed that I don't like the util packages. So what you can do? So okay, so what you would usually have is the following. So I need my following. We have a package, and the name of the package is here, I don't know, customer, and here is the address, and another package is, or components is called, I don't know, what do you have, orders. And everything resides in the application called Airhacks. If we don't have JSF, we don't have the business layer, so everything here is in root. So we have here boundary, control, entity. And again, boundary, control, entity, and so forth. Of course, control is optional, and entities are also optional. And even boundary is optional, but then you need control if you have your reusable stuff. So what you could do here, this was actually the answer, you could introduce a component called, how to call it, IBAN Lex Banking. And this component is actually on the same level, so forgot about this is banking. It doesn't have the B, so it has just the C, and all other components can just take the IBAN converter from here. So this is the first answer. So you can absolutely do this. So you can put reusable stuff in a component, and this component can be accessible to all other components. Okay. So, but sometimes you will say, okay, it is not worth to introduce a component, so it will be completely fine to put some reusable or reusable classes in the root of the application, which basically means there's a shared classes which are accessible to all other components. Okay, so there's no, creating a package util is extremely dangerous, because if you name something util, you will find everything in there, because everyone which would just put into util or common, even worse, or I don't know, infrastructure framework or whatever. Okay. Perfect. What is your opinion about BPM and or a workflow engine in a project? So you know when you need it. This would be my answer. So usually, if you're just building your apps and you are happy, there is no point to introduce BPM. But if you have long-running transactions, or transaction would start next week at 8 a.m. and they have to be several roles. So there is one role and the role does something, and then another role takes over. Then this is a perfect case for BPM. And actually one project is this ancient one. I think it was, 15 years ago or something. We actually had to approve orders. So there were orders coming from the outside, and these orders had to be approved. But if the approval didn't happen in 2 days or something, the order was automatically cancelled. This was perfect case for BPM. So this works. But what I see instead is, perfectly working projects or applications, and someone comes in, it's like, we need BPM, and then everything is going to be simpler and it will save money. This is what I don't believe. So this is my opinion about BPM. Okay. What's there? JBoss Forge, this is a nice one. What is my opinion about JBoss Forge? What JBoss Forge is a nice little project builder where you can just bootstrap your project. just do it. So you can just, if you're starting with something, you can just with JBoss Forge, create a Maven project with JPA, whatever, and you are not really depending on it. You can just, in any point of time, you can get rid of JBoss Forge and then go forward without JBoss Forge. Why would you choose Payara Micro Whiteflow Swarm? Also another question from Victor. I never used them. Actually, what I plan to do, I will try to compare, or I will compare Whitefly Swarm to a Whitefly Full and Payara Micro to Payara Full. I have to admit, in all my projects, we use always the Full. Why? There was no memory difference, the memory footprint difference. In all my projects, we need security, JAX-RS, transactions, and mostly even JPA. So going with Micro or Swarm and setting up everything, for me, for my projects, didn't make any sense. And if you consider with Docker, so I recorded some YouTube sessions about this. Docker is perfect for full stack application servers because there is deployment process. So you can clearly separate the application, the image from the application server from the actual war image. Okay. Someone asked me, in microservices environment, as shown in my microservice course, is it okay to use orchestration parameters JSON object? What does it mean? Of course, once they arrive to EJB facet, they are converted to real domain. Are there some drawbacks in using JSON object? Absolutely. I mean, I use JSON objects all the time, or all the time, 50-50. Sometimes I use JAX-B objects, sometimes JSON objects, but I use JSON objects more and more. This is what I wanted to say. And orchestration parameters, that's what I don't get. So input and output JSON object, JSON P are fine. So this is what is perfectly okay to use. Okay, so now this. Ulrich, builds a business controller with view scope and injected entity manager, and the IDE says entity manager is not serializable, should ignore the warnings. Yes, it should, because it should work. So entity manager should be serializable. You get the same problem with stateful, for instance. And the second question is, I'm also injecting JPA entities, which works initially fine with this one. And this one will be a little bit more cautious with that, because if you are injecting entity, the entity is managed by CDI and then also managed by the entity manager. And if you're injecting the entity, it means there could be only one per scope. So if you are searching for entities in the database and you get multiple instances, it might be a little bit problematic, because to having only one, to have only you can only inject one entity, but you can retrieve several entities from the entity manager. So there is different paradigms for CDI and for the entity manager. So what happens here? This is actually a fine strategy. So the input is merge and this is attached. You should always use the result of the merge method, because if you don't use the result of the merge method, this is just detached entity. You will always have to use result of the merged method. Okay, I hope it was clear. So is something here? No. How you implement multi-tenancy in Java EE? So I try to avoid it, because if you implement a multi-tenant system, what it means is more complex than a single tenant one. So what might be a good idea to provide one microservice per tenant, if you don't have millions of tenants. So this would be my first idea. And multi-tenancy, what it basically means, so there are different levels, like different views. So you will have to get idea, properly load different CSS style sheets in worst case. Then different components. I don't even know whether the view should be a multi-tenant. In the database, it's the simplest, because Eclipse Link and Hibernate already support multi-tenancy. The only problem with the multi-tenancy is that it is not supported by the JPA standard yet. So you will have to enhance your where statements if you would like to be, JPA compliant or Java compliant. So this is what multi-tenancy means to me. What you can even do, you can have multiple entity managers, one entity manager per tenant, And very similar to this question here with the payment type, you can inject different entity managers depending on the tenant ID or whatever. So this is also achievable. So you can do this absolutely. So the question is, what you are building. If you're building a cloud where the tenant is the usual case, you will have to be, you have a completely different strategy than you have, 2 clients and you have 1 app. Then I will probably build, fork the app and build 2 different apps, 1 per client. So it really depends what you would like to do. Okay, so yeah, this is endless topic. So I hope the question is actually answered. So Java 6 JSF presentation and EJB for business logic. Both modules are packed in an ear, so better would be a war, of course. And then it uses thread local storage to pass along tenant information like username or whatever. Is it possible to similar approach in Java EE? I call that context holder. So if you go here to the HG and search for context holder, there is a prototype of this, old one, very old one. And what I did then, I implemented probably, thread local and transaction synchronization registry. So what you can do, I think I implemented this here. You can inject in transaction synchronization registry on what the transaction synchronization, you see an ancient sample from 2009. And the transaction synchronization registry is bound to the current transaction. So you can put, you can just pass whatever information you like to the transaction synchronization registry, and as long as it is the same transaction, it will just work. So what you can also do, you can use the transactional scope. This is basically the same. So you can put all the information in a class annotated with transactional scope. Or even request scope. This is what you can do. This is how to pass the information in Java EE. Thread local would also work, but there are simpler approaches than thread local. Again, transaction scope, request scope, and transaction synchronization registry, and you can just pass the information. Okay. Canada, crazy. It's really true. So no one from South Pole so far, but really crazy. So thank you for watching. So we the next question is how to migrate away from rich faces. So why this? I think the link is broken. So I tried it earlier, but it didn't work. So I will try this. And the problem is this rich faces is end of life, and the question is, how to migrate away from rich faces, and and he asked me, how to moving to prime faces, or where, and I would say from rich faces to prime faces, I mean, it will work, of course, but there's a lot to do. The components are not compatible. It is really we were in some older project were stuck with older rich faces version, and they were really afraid to migrate to the newer one, and this is like a cross migration. So it really depends on the size of the project. You can of course migrate to AngularJS. The problem with that, if you would like to have nice migration, you would like to have something like nice REST API, which you probably don't have. So you will have to introduce a nice REST API first, and then create the AngularJS app. So what you should evaluate, what you should look at, tables and the more sophisticated components from prime faces, look at your rich faces components, say, okay, is there a path, one-way path from rich faces to prime faces? And then just with prototype, proof of concept, try to migrate one table, for instance, and see what happens. And at the same time, probably you have already a boundary control entity architecture. In this particular case, you only will have to think about the business logic and create a nice REST API, which calls the existing boundaries, the EJBs, and then you're also set. So my application is new to production and expect lots of changes in the system in the future. So then if it's new, usually means it's small. And the question is now, should we go to Angular 2, not Angular 1? Because Angular 1 is like almost a legacy. So Angular 2 or prime faces. This is what I would just create 2 small proof of concepts and then decide, which route to go. Okay, so what's there? Dave from Victoria. So first question to Victoria, is now hot in Canada? I suppose so, or not. And now I try to understand the question. Can we call EJBs from NAS1? Could this be used to make a sort Java E REPL? Of course. And I do it actually a lot. I don't know. Another example of this book is called Fluid Logic, also from 2000. And I did exactly this in this example. So by the way, the example is free, so you can absolutely download this. So there is no. You have 1 year time, then Kenai will shut down. So, and this is, I think, the calculator. This happens here. I'm using here the script engine NAS1, and this is an EJB. And what I'm doing here, manipulating an API. What you also could do, you could manipulate an EJB, and a REPL is exactly what I did. What we created, for instance, a validation for JPE entities with NAS1 worked perfectly. And in the project Headlands from GitHub, you can also look at this. Headlands. What I created like entry processor, which can be written in JavaScript, so you have full access to whatever to the cache using NAS1. And another project, if you're interested in Headlands, would be Nhydrator. And in this project, you can use NAS1 functions to transform data. So it is not a REPL, but like a REPL. So the answer is absolutely, you can do this. Okay, perfect. So how you structure application-wide use classes ECB, entity control boundary. And if you're not aware what ECB is, this is like my way to structuring Java applications. So if you go to Adam Bean and BCE, you will find some YouTube videos and the boundary control entity. So take a look at that. So search for this. It's another homework assignment. In your examples, I'm going to structure application like, this posts entity posts. Exactly, business posts entity posts. How would a class-based entity, which is a base class of all entities, fit in ECB? So first, I would question we need base entity, but if you really need this, I will put it right into the business package. And there are lots of base entities. So base entities are actually a really suspicious name. You should name it, I don't know, versionable entity. And there is lots of stuff which is going to be versioned. Then I will create a component called versions and put the entity into versions on the same level as posts.entity. This is what I would do. But first, I will question the need for a base entity. If you really need it, then first idea, again, at the business level. And if you get lots of classes, base is wrong name. You should find a better name, like versionable entity or optimistic entity or whatever, and then put it on the same level as the posts. Okay, next one. Someone is using Whitefly Pink, and the Pink war is deployed into a Docker container. Everything works fine, and the question is how to redeploy without restarting the container. And this is what I actually don't do. If I'm working with Docker, I always use my local server for development, and then a script which, or either a local script which creates my local Docker image. It takes milliseconds, or is what we would always have in continuous integration environment, a pipeline, and the Docker image is created in the pipeline, because there's actually no need to run local Docker with hot deployment. I never did it. But if you would really like to do this, there is of course a possibility. First, you can set up as a SSH server and push it via SSH. If you replace the war, it is going to be redeployed. You can even mount a folder on the host machine and compile into this folder. Is also going to be hot deployed. But I wouldn't do this. So I never did it. I always use a local server, and the Docker image is for the test and for the integration stage. Okay, let's see what happens here. Nothing here. Nothing here. How to handle distributed systems in microservices. By the way, I really don't like the microservices trend right now, but it is exactly what happens in the service-oriented architectures. I get a project assignment like crazy about microservices, and what we do right now, we try to deliver as simple and beautiful Java application as possible with no skinny wars, nice communication, and they are at the end microservices, but no one cares about the term in the project. But this is a nice marketing term. So if you ask me about microservices, I would think, okay, you would like to build reasonable apps. This is for me microservices. So service discovery. So Snoopy is a really nice framework from Ivar Grimstad. First, I always get the question about service discovery, and we never discover anything in enterprise, because if you use something like a Docker, it comes with the user-defined network already, and this is absolutely sufficient in most projects. So I actually also explained this in the Java microservices course. What I did there is I just linked two microservices together, and if you do this, one microservice with the name A can access the microservice with the name B, and just by the name of the container B. And what Docker will do, it will automatically resolve the B with the IP address, and this is dynamic. It can happen at runtime, and this is more than enough for most enterprise apps. Distributed transaction services. The answer is there are no distributed transaction in microservices. What you will have to do is to change the business logic. This is not a set answer. I think it solves a lot of problems. So, for instance, what you will have to do, you will have to introduce compensative transactions, which are not just undos. It is a reaction to a failure. Like, let's say Amazon would try, to ship something but is not available. They will get an email like, dear customer, would you like still to have it? We are not able to ship, and you can just say yes or no. This would be the compensative transaction, and Amazon wouldn't just cancel the order. Exactly. And okay, and by the way, on the architecture day at the Munich airport, we always spend, I think, at least 1 hour discussing exactly this with different examples, because it's a most asked question. Logging, what you centralized logging infrastructure, like for instance Logstash, might be interesting. And debugging is actually non-issue. You can remotely debug Docker containers given the port is exposed. And the whole project will always work. You can have multiple debug sessions, and then you will see the flow from one project to another. This is very similar to debugging GSF and the backend from two wars. Okay, this is 8 hours ago, so a recent one, and someone Paulis tries to run the Payara Micro. And by the way, if you have questions to Payara, guys and gals, I will show you something. The problem with the Payara, they spam my whole, no, this is my client actually, but all the others are spamming my timeline. You see what happens. Payara, they committed, they working on the Payara like day and night, and they just cranking the code like crazy. So this was of course just a joke. So created a branch Payara 5 an hour ago, so they never sleep, they're just cranking code. What do you have to do? You have to go here and re-ask the question in the issues, and the community will help you, because I don't use Payara Micro a lot. In all my projects, I use the Payara full or Whitefly full, but never the Payara Micro. you say no logins modules configured for file realm. What I suppose is that the Payara Micro doesn't come with the full security stack from the Payara Full, but this is where my knowledge ends. So I will investigate a bit. What I will do, I will record screencasts comparing the memory footprint of Payara Micro to Payara Full. This would really interest me. Okay, so sorry, it's not really answered, but I'm pretty sure that Payara engineers will help you. So this is actually interesting also, and this is like risk assessment, and with hazard. There is a hazard here, and risk assessment steps. Step had hazard type, and hazard type had hazard. And there is a multiple 1 to n relations, and the question is, I would like to access the DB as few times as possible, and how to do this? The first question is caching. You could cache, but this would be like caching the whole tree. I mean, if you have enough memory, you can try this. So do everything eager, preload this, and if everything is as memory and doesn't change frequently, the performance would be perfect. So we actually did it. What we did it in some projects is the following: we loaded whatever was necessary to for one role of one person into memory, and then use JPA lambdas for the queries. And of course, because we didn't use the database anymore, the performance was extremely good. Of course, if database changes, you won't recognize the changes. This is the issue of caching. So otherwise, what you could do, of course, you can go direct to database and just try to find, the the hazards here directly. What can help you if you're using business keys and not technical keys, and the business key reveals, the something about the relation, you can perform some trickery to find the hazard directly. But I really don't know enough about the risk assessment domain to judge that. But if you're using instead, integer risk assessment ID, something like, I don't know, customer underscore whatever, so business key, then it might be easier to locate the hazard without traversing all the stuff here. So you could try to cache the whole tree and measure the memory footprint. This is what I would do. Try to stupidly make everything eager. Proof of concept would take, I don't know, a few hours. Everything is in memory, and then provide a heap dump and measure, what is the impact on memory. It could be actually not that high, because the objects are surprisingly small, and then measure the performance comparing it to queries. So this is what I would do, and this is actually fun to experimenting with such projects. Yeah, complete in memory might be actually a very good idea if your graph doesn't change frequently. If it does change frequently, you will have to refresh the whole graph, and you will end up having lots of SQL statements refreshing and the whole graph here. You can also have a hybrid, like, look at Infinispan or Hazelcast. This could also help you. So then we are actually done with all the questions. So there are no questions in the chat, no questions in the wiki, which is nice. I got, I think, one remaining question in the blog, something with Java FX and controller. So let's take a look at the controller here. I think this was this one. So I delivered actually a deep dive session for Silicon Valley Java FX user group remotely. So it was at 2 a.m. So it was fun. And here someone asked me a question. Regarding best structuring is a modular event handling for those apps that require complex menu bar toolbar structures. So what I do in the Afterburner case, I set up something like application controller, which handles the high level events, and the panel controllers handle the panel events. And I think even I was about to migrate the Lightfish example to this. It's probably even migrated. So take a look at the LightView or Lightfish example from my GitHub. I think it already worked like this because it has a menu bar. And go to Lightfish. Where is the fish here? And the Lightfish comes with LightView, and the LightView has probably such a controller. So take a brief look at that. And there should be the app and the presenter. But this is the top level, so we have to dashboard. And I think the dashboard presenter is the top level presenter, which I will have to look at this. But the idea would be you have a top level presenter or controller which controls the app, like close, for instance, right? You will ask all other controllers, hey, should I close it, or please save your state, I'm about to close. And this goes to the app controller. Okay, now we are really done. Even a bonus question was answered. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Chip, for saying that it was a nice session. I really enjoyed. There are lots of people from all over the place. Batch fetching. I used not batch fetching. I used how it's called, batch insert or batch create. This is what I did. Never use batch fetching actually. So is it an, I will have to look at this. I use the creation implementation is like batch inserts, I think. So where the all the inserts are batched, and batch fetching I never use that. Could be an option. So thank you and see you next month. So keep asking, and yeah, enjoy the weather from all over the world. And it was always fun. And yeah, and hello from Greece, Florida. I forgot Greece and Milan. So it's really, really nice. So you all are great. See you next month.